starting to believe that a lot of mammals also have theory of mind. It's not just humans, right? The dividing line between like what is distinctly human at this point is really thin. We've only found a couple of things right now. Robert Sapolsky at Stanford talks about this a lot. He's great. He thinks the only two things that separate humans that lower species can't do, what is distinctly human, is our ability to delay gratification super long term. Like we have religion, right? We are willing to delay gratification until after I'm dead, right? This life sucks and then you're going to go to heaven. So we're willing to do that. And we also have the ability to synthesize opposing ideas, right? The Hegelian dialectic. I can take this thing over here on this side, this thing over here on this, and put it together and synthesize new ideas, which most animals don't seem to be able to do. But everything else we've pretty much found.
Well, isn't language one of the big ones? Because with, I mean, I think most animals, even if they're aware and their consciousness, and even if they have some sort of a crude form of communication, what they really lack is the ability to understand how the other person thinks. Like you're talking to me, and this is the first time we've met. We're talking, and I'm getting inside your head, even from the whole coffee should be black, you know, and you have your methodology
You're gonna hold
for
this
achieving.
against me for the rest of my life.
I'm drinking black coffee. We're fine.
All right.
I mean, but it's like I'm seeing how you think, and what I do, what I try to do at least, is when I'm talking to someone, I try to sort of empty my head out and let them get in my head. Like I would try to think like you're thinking, and when I think I've always said that that's what's happening in an audience when someone's on stage and they're killing. When a comedian is on stage, like if I'm watching someone I think is really funny, like Bill Burr or something like that, I give my brain to him. I get like go ahead, take me on a ride. And so when he's on stage and he's killing, I'm sort of like letting him think for me, and I'm not questioning or taking things down other paths or allowing myself to also think about my bills or I got to get gas before I go home. I'm just thinking what he's providing me. You know, there's this, and that ability is uniquely human. The ability to try to understand how another person's communicating and thinking, and then I start taking into variables. Okay, like, well, especially now that I'm a father, over this last quarter of my life, I've really concentrated on the concept of everybody used to be a baby. Like when I was young and single, everyone was static. That old lady's always been an old lady.
Right.
That old dude's always been an old dude. Now, once I had a kid, you know, from then on, when I'm raising my children, people now are babies that grew up. Everyone's a baby that became an adult. I see some crazy old man with a big fucking W.C. Fields nose and he's drinking. I'm like, oh, that guy was a baby at one point in time. And I forced myself to go down that sort of a path. So I think that the ability to think how other people think and to sort of commiserate with each other in a very broad and expansive way, I think that's very uniquely human.
I'm not sure. I think we need to I mean, the more we figure out about like whale language, dolphin language, yeah. Right? There's really, Jimmy, if you look, you might be able to dig it up. There's a guy, I want to say he's at Northern Arizona University, who worked on prairie dog language. Have you heard about this? This is crazy research. So one of the reasons we've never been able to study animal communication, and I could screw this up, but we'll try it, is we couldn't talk back, right? We couldn't talk to them. So what he did is he recorded a ton of prairie dog communication and then started sort of decoding what little things mean, but used a computer to play it back to them. So what he discovered is prairie dogs, which you don't think of as particularly intelligent, when they started decoding their language, they started to realize that prairie dogs routinely say things like, hey, be careful of that right path over there because there's a fat guy in a purple sweater coming this way. That detailed, like in the beginning, they used to think animals only sort of communicated in like nouns and verbs. Present tense, nouns and verbs, right? Snake, you know, there are some certain calls that are
monkeys do that,
right?
Yeah.
The three calls. Now they're starting to realize they've got adjectives, they've got tenses. They can think in for a while they thought animals lived in a perpetual present, right? Like the argument was all animals are always in flow, right? Which is focused everything in the now. It turns out that's not the case at all. They have pasts, they have futures.
Whoa.
We ask this question a lot running an animal sanctuary because if we're caring for a dog, it's not just old or special needs. It's come from a shelter. It was on death row. It was probably, if it's ended up with us, because we work with the worst of the worst of the worst, it's been very, very badly abused, et cetera, et cetera. And the question my wife and I always used to talk about was, do they know? Do they feel grateful to us? Can they remember their past enough to know that, you know, the present is different and we were what was different? Like those kinds of questions. And after, you know, 10, 12 years of doing this work hardcore, I think they really know. And I think, you know, they live in a time scale that's a lot broader than we've given them credit for.
Now, this work that's been done on prairie dogs, has it been done on any other animals? A New Language Discover, Prairie Doggies. It's a Radiolab episode. Nice. Powerful Radiolab from 2011. Radiolab's fucking awesome. By the way, if you haven't listened to that podcast, folks, that's one of my all-time favorites. I've learned so much from that show. But that's incredible. They can tell you the color of the clothes. They have a noise for the color. Fuck.
It's neat, right?
It's incredible.
And it changes the way you think about animals.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know, well, the dolphin one is really weird. Dolphins, I've found out recently that the babies come up with their own names. They come up with names for each other. Like the mother will say something to them, and then the baby will say something to that, and then the mother will repeat that, and the baby will like choose that as a name.
Dolphins name themselves.
Yeah, they name themselves.
That's
the
really
babies name themselves.
Could you imagine if we let human babies name themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, dolphins all sound like babies. It's like, you know, I mean, they don't really have.
It's sort of like ET on helium.
Sounds. Right. Yeah. Well, dolphin
They
consciousness.
don't have German sounds.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I mean, that's one of the weirdest things about people is the distinctly different sounds that we have geographically. You know, Middle Eastern has a lot of, and German has a lot of the guttural sort of, and then, you know, South America has that flowy sort of, you know, the beautiful Latin sounds to a lot of the way they speak. Yeah, you don't really see too much of that with dolphins, but you do see some of it. You definitely see some dialects and some variables. That's always the most fascinating thing to me is that we really don't know what the fuck they're saying
At all.
Yeah,
at all.
And we've been studying it forever.
And there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of human arrogance, right, in the way. There's a lot of us being full of ourselves and I mean, you know. We want to believe in it. You know, they put it in the Bible. We're the master of Earth. We get to, you know, and that's a hell of a lot easier to be if other species aren't conscious and aren't communicating and aren't feeling.
Well, what's interesting to me is that they've determined now, at least the people that are studying great apes, that chimps have moved into Stone Age. They believe that chimps are now at the beginning stages of the Stone Age. And if chimps continue to evolve the way they have and the way supposedly we have, in 1 million years from now, chimps might have fucking houses and tools and cars and they might be some totally new, completely different thing.
There's some kind of Charlton Heston joke here just waiting to happen that I can't get to. But
I mean, it makes sense. If we did at one point in time, obviously we weren't, unless you believe in creationism, we weren't born as human beings. We weren't invented, and there wasn't an Adam and an Eve. There was some sort of hominid that eventually got smarter, and through natural selection and through the genetic mutations, diet choice, all the different variables that they think contributed to the human being becoming the human being. But it wasn't always that. So if a chimp, like right now, if we can, like we observe them eating tools, I'm sure you've seen the famous photo of the orangutan that's holding onto the branch spearfishing.
yes.
Fucking A, man. That one's a mind blower. Like, he's got a tool.
So here's the interesting question, of course, because we've already accelerated evolution among humans. We probably can accelerate it among other species if we want to.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting.